everyone, welcome to Screen Geeks. This is Dave.
This is Barry.
And joining us today, we are honored, blessed, many different adjectives, adverbs, whatever, to have Keith Garcia, the artistic director of the Sie Filmcenter / Denver Film. We've known you for years, sir. We've been wanting to get you on forever. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Heck yeah, man. I've talked with you several times, like, hey, we should get you on. Hey, we should get you on. And it worked out because we have technology now.
Yes, and we're all trapped in our homes.
Yes, yes. We are this week talking about the main reason I wanted to bring Keith on is A, any excuse, but B, we're talking about Anna and the Apocalypse, which I originally saw at the Denver Film Festival. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
Okay, because I checked IMDb and the release date showed that 2017, but I figured that was the UK release date.
Yeah, and I think that was because it came out for Christmas, shortly after that.
Yes. So I revisited it. Barry, I gave you homework, and I didn't tell you what you were in for, that it was a Christmas zombie musical.
No, I did not know it was a musical. You have to understand, Keith, I haven't seen this. I'd heard it was great for years. People have been telling me to see this movie. Dave says, let's talk about it. I'm like, great. He's like, it's a zombie movie. I'm like, awesome. Watching Anna and the Apocalypse and expecting a zombie movie is like watching Grease and expecting The Warriors. That was my experience. I'm like, they're singing? It's a musical? Oh, God. This is not what I thought it'd be at all. What the hell is this?
So it might be fair to say we might have some different takes on this one.
Yes.
That's okay. You did a double feature with another movie, which I'm sure we'll touch base on too.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Yes. So Keith, were you involved with the programming at all for getting this film in, or was this with your cohort and co-conspirator?
This was actually my cohort, Matt Campbell. This had come to him, and mind you, he does a lot of. He watches more movies than I do. I'm just going to give him the credit for that.
Dang.
I feel like his job, as he takes very seriously, is to just sit in the office watching screeners. Not to say he doesn't have other work to do, but I'll be like, I'll know I can find Matt in the office because he's just watching movies. Especially when we start getting it from Sundance on in a year, it's just that's him just camped out, taking in screeners that were at festivals, and he, up until this year, would travel to a bunch. And I think he'd seen Anna at a previous film festival, and I had not gone to Fantastic Fest that year, which I think they featured it there. So there's a million places where these kind of things pop up, but I had heard about it through my usual just horror movie followings, be it Fangoria magazine or just the internet in general and fans and all that, just talking about stuff that they hear about from other festivals, Fantasia, all that stuff. So I kind of heard it was coming down the pike and thought it sounded super interesting. I was glad that we were already talking to the team behind it. So that's
cool.
How that landed at Denver Film.
Okay, I have to ask because, again, we go way back, and you're responsible for us seeing Troll 2 and Best Worst Movie and stuff, and with Watching Hour back in the day. So
yeah.
So I guess I'll just jump right into it. Having revisited it some, what were your takeaways on it, Keith?
Well, so my viewing of it, and I saw it actually just before the festival. We got a screener copy, and I was like, let me take a look at this guy. 2017 is an interesting year for the zombie genre. I feel like 2017 is the year that everyone finally decided they were fed up with the zombie genre. That Walking Dead was sort of the last gasp of trying to keep people interested in the zombie genre as we knew it. And anything that was coming out around that time, you had to be so wildly different from every other movie to make a dent. From every other zombie movie, to make a dent in people's memory. And the fact that this is, sure, a zombie movie up top, but a Christmas movie and a musical is you're already checking those extra boxes to be like, no, it's not like any other zombie movie you've seen. This one has songs. Which, to that credit, that's great. But I also feel like, and I'm going to have to pop up in my IMDb just to get the right year on this. Train to Busan.
Oh, yeah.
Have either of you seen that film?
It's on my Netflix queue. I need to.
Yeah.
So that had come out the year before. And I feel like Train to Busan was actually the official, like... I actually remember seeing it and thinking, well, we can stop making zombie movies now.
Yeah.
Because it's the first zombie movie that made me cry, which I was just like, all the more reason why I'm like, stop right there. I don't want to experience another zombie movie that's not going to make me cry. I didn't even realize that was an option with a zombie movie. And so Train to Busan is just such an original take on it, on telling a story that is about zombies and a virus, but is also about humanity, even more so than 90% of the zombie movies that we've had since Night of the Living Dead. And Night of the Living Dead, I think, from the get-go, is about humanity entirely. Like, Night of the Living Dead was the first to tread in those waters, so splash around in those waters, really. And then what everyone else took from that and further sequels and extensions of all that, it strayed away a little bit from the humanity, unless George Romero was involved, because he always kind of kept... That was his thread that he was trying to keep through all of his entries in the zombie chapters. But the notable ones are the ones that really kind of focus on humanity. It's like Shaun of the Dead. I always put up with there as one of those standouts, because by using comedy, it still balances humanity and the people that are involved in a situation like that.
Well, it's about a man-child having to kind of deal with responsibility, too.
Exactly. And there's some tough decisions that are made in that movie. Like, it's not all knee slappers. But we got Train to Busan, and then, like I said, I was kind of like, I, along with many people, were like, and done. Like, we don't need anything else. So when I first heard about End of the Apocalypse, I was kind of like, I'm weary. Like, I like the idea. Like, I love a good musical. I love a good Christmas movie. We're doing zombies. Okay, let's see where that's actually going to take us. But first time watching it, I will say the word enchanted is really what kind of got me. I definitely feel like I was falling into a nice little musical spell. Like, I was watching Beauty and the Beast for the first time, and the first like overture song comes in, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is the thing.
Well, the Hollywood ending is just kind of unreasonably catchy.
Yeah, and that's a very smart thing. Is I think that they definitely made sure they probably went through a million songs before they were like, we have to have one song that people walk away from this movie humming, and they found it. So good on them for that. But have I strayed wildly from the question you asked?
No. What were your thoughts of it? It's okay. It's okay. You know, I was so excited to hear what you had to say about it. I totally forgot to throw to watching a trailer clip first, which we'll do after you talk about the film. It's all good.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I think that was my first impression was you better be better than, or you better not sully the memory of Train to Busan just a year before. Don't be a wasteful zombie movie. But thankfully, it was not.
And before we get to my thoughts, before we let Barry have his dissenting view, let's go ahead and roll a clip of the trailer so that we don't get like our ad revenue taken or whatever, like WWE did with the No Holds Barred episode. So we'll be right back.
Further updates. Reports of mass infection with the as yet unidentified virus continue to come in from across the world.
Have a good morning.
Sure, it'll be the same as always.
Can you hear me? I'm a first aider.
So I'm kind of very much in the same boat. I mean, I haven't seen Train to Busan, which sounds like that just has moved onto my list of shame, which is okay. I just crossed The Exorcist off 2 nights ago, so it's all good.
Yeah. Hold on. No. What did you think of The Exorcist, Dave? Tell us.
It was okay. No. It's very interesting to... I'm going to. This is kind of like my E.T. experience, except I didn't hate The Exorcist like I hate E.T., having seen it in high school as opposed to when I was a kid when it came out. I think The Exorcist plays very differently now. Part of it all is like, if I'd seen this 6 months ago in the before times, it probably really would have struck a chord and been a lot more creepy than it is. But like, since we're in the waking nightmare that is COVID and societal injustice and everything else, I'm just like, I get that it's a big deal, but it's not hitting me too much. However, the filmmaking is phenomenal. The chances that Friedkin took were so amazing. Like, I kind of want to question Linda Blair's parents. What were you thinking, letting her say that? But it also made the film feel so much more real. Like there's an authenticity and an earnestness behind it that I really appreciated. And I enjoyed. I don't know if is The Exorcist something you can really enjoy though.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It wasn't there, but it was like the performances were absolutely from top to bottom amazing. Yeah. And at the very end, like seeing Leap of Faith. That's why I watched the film. We'll talk about this in another another thing that we're going to record with Keith. Denver Film ended up having a special screening, a virtual screening of Leap of Faith from Alexander Philippe, and where he's talking about why am I brain farting on the older guy? Oh my God, Max von Sydow. Good Lord. It's late or something. But when he's talking about like Max von Sydow doesn't believe in God, so he's having a hard time with that ending, I was just like, I would have never guessed it because of how just like full of conviction that performance was. Yeah. And what I really appreciated was like I went into it pretty much blind. But as far as I went was I asked Alexander, hey, do I watch the director cut or, the version you've never seen or the theatrical? He said, watch theatrical. And that's all that I knew. So I didn't know that you don't actually see possession for most of this movie. And having it hang over you. And Friedkin knows that's what you're expecting, so he lets you have the cues. Is it coming now? Nope, not quite yet. Is it coming now? Nope, not quite yet. It was just such a masterstroke. I really appreciate the film a lot.
One question that actually an audience member asked for me to ask Friedkin in our Q&A was, what was the thought behind not showing Regan getting possessed or why, or explaining why she was possessed? And I always thought his answer in this Q&A was, makes me want to I've seen The Exorcist maybe like 10 times over my life, but it makes me want to go back and watch again because he's just like, he says, why do children get shot in the street? Like, it's just that simple of like, bad things happen, and it's usually to children. And so this was just, it was going to happen to someone in this story, and it just happened to happen to this sweet little girl. And I thought that was a really fascinating way to, there's the impending everything only because we can expect it, but there isn't a, like, we don't see subtle signs of like, here comes the devil. Like, there's no like looming something. Like there is some like predictive stuff that we know from the beginning, at least from Max von Sydow's point. I mean, he's doing that dig in Iraq, and we understand that statue, and like something big is coming, but we don't have the standard. And maybe in 1973 there wasn't entirely, well, actually, if you go back through cinema, there are movies where we know something's creeping up and something's coming, but there isn't the moment where she touches something and is possessed. It just happens. She just changes and happens. I remember when the re-release came out, the director's cut in 2000, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That played at the Continental here in Denver, and on their big giant screen. And I was so excited to go see it, especially with an audience. And I was appalled, not by the film, but the audience in 2000 laughed at every little thing. And not in a nervous way, but in a, wow, this movie's dated way. Like, they just could not get into this as a drama. And every little thing that happened from, anyway, Ellen Burstyn has to overreact about what's happening to her daughter, to like Regan like peeing her pants, to when she starts turning into the devil and like cursing and being, really awful. Like the audience was laughing. And I had to leave. Me and my friends had to leave because we were just like, we can't tell 200 people to shut up that they're not getting it, because obviously as a group they just were not getting it, and that really bothered me, and bothers me whenever I do run into like showing a classic that does happen to be a little over the top or not the way that cinema of the last 20 years has gone. That people just have an overt reaction, just being like, that's stupid. And so, anyway.
Gotcha. I do have a question for both of you. There was one thing that kind of caught me as weird at the end, is that after, when everything happens and we're getting our quote-unquote happy ending, as happy as you're going to get, it kind of felt like they were like, hey, thanks for the God help, peace out, we're gone, and we're going to move on with our lives. Like, I mean, I know it was, maybe you'll appreciate having this little pendant more than we will. But it was kind of like, that was nice, thanks for the help, we're going to move on with life now.
Kind of.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's not good or bad. It was just something that kind of struck me as, that's interesting. You just went through literally hell and then peace.
Yeah. And Father Karras, has us tumble down the stairs and
Yes.
all that stuff. I mean, I think that just becomes a bigger question of like, well, what do you say after your child
that's true.
has been possessed by the devil?
That's what I needed to hear, Keith. I'll be honest. Like, I was just like,
Yeah.
it's a very human thing of, how do you even talk about this after this just happened?
I imagine this is like a continual shock. I can only imagine. It's like you go through that. This priest takes on the devil, maybe, or it's debatable if you watch Leap of Faith about what really happens to Father Karras. He has a terrible tumble, dies, and then everything just kind of like whoop whoop whoop. But I just think it's probably like they were probably in shock for weeks.
I'm betting Ellen Burstyn probably had some kind of PTSD going forward. Now, if Regan never remembers, I mean, that's kind of a different thing, but still.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious.
No, I think you both nailed it. I mean, it's like when you thank the minister at the end of the funeral. You don't high five the minister. Man,
Yeah.
Well, you talked about my dad. No, I mean, you're like, thank you. Okay, and then you shake hands, and you really don't even want to see that person again.
That's absolutely fair.
You did the thing that I could not do, which
Yes.
is like,
Yeah.
bring us this room full to an understanding that this person we know is gone, and make us feel like everything will be okay again.
Yes.
Only much more forcibly in The Exorcist, but
Yeah. An incredibly an incredibly intimate experience that you never want to talk with that person about again. That's okay. You helped clarify it, so I appreciate that, guys. So back to Anna and the Apocalypse.
yeah.
It's okay. I appreciate the derailing, Barry. I totally understand. It's like, wait, you've never seen that? I get it. It's all good. So Anna and the Apocalypse, I think, holds an interesting place. Like, I think the music, like getting to your point, Keith, the music's really good. Like, I popped Hollywood Ending in the car after I went to the Denver Film Society, Film Festival screening. I was like, where's it on Google Music? I have to listen to it now. And I thought it was really good overall. I think it was trying really hard to make sure it wasn't Shaun of the Dead, because it'd be very easy to be kind of a pale imitation, which, Barry, you might think it is. It's all good. But I kind of put it, I think enchanting is a good way, like, to put it. Like, it just kind of struck my heartstrings in just the right way. I don't know if you ever saw Warm Bodies, like 10 years ago or whatever. It kind of feels like in that same way, except somehow darker, because Warm Bodies, it's a different thing. It creates its own rules, but I think it played by those rules well, and it made a charming story, which I think Anna finds a way to do as well. It's obviously anchored by Ella Hunt. Like, if she doesn't knock it out of the park with every bit of her performance, I think the film kind of falls apart. The gore, there's gore in it. It's not. It could have been a lot more gratuitous than it was. There are characters you love and hate, and kind of keeping in theme with that song Hollywood Ending, maybe not the characters you want to make it or gonna make it. It's like, well, this is who we got anyway. It stuck with me. I really enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it a lot both times that she's watched it. So getting my wife to watch a horror movie is no small task. So the fact that she's ever like, yeah, sure, I'll watch it, I'm in. I'm okay. We're good. That scores points by itself. So Barry, I'll let you get on your soapbox now and let it go, sir.
Well, let me jump off from what Keith said, and I really appreciate that. I do feel like the zombie genre, it's not that they've run out of inspiration. I mean, frankly, I love this genre, particularly because of the voice that George A. Romero had with it. I always felt like with every film, even the lesser ones, even Diary of the Dead, I always felt like he had something to say with these movies. I always felt like they were always about what was going on in the world right now. I look at those lesser films, and by the way, I don't even consider Land of the Dead or Diary of the Dead to be lesser movies. I like all of his films. To a degree, I really love most of Romero's zombies movies. And I think when we lost him, I think we kind of, as you both have indicated, we've kind of lost the need for them without them just being a novelty. I liked Warm Bodies as well, but not only, and I agree completely with Keith, not only was Train to Busan, which is a South Korean film, not only was that a shot in the arm, so to speak, that the zombie genre really needed. But Dave, you may remember this, and I'm sure you do. We saw this German zombie film called Rambach.
Yes.
It came out in the year 2010. I want to bring that up. It's only, for those of you listening going, what the hell is Rambach? It's only 70 minutes long. It's a German zombie film. It does have heart. It's innovative. It's interesting. It's different. It's a little over an hour, but it's very eventful, and it's really dynamic. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for because, and I'll be completely honest, I enjoyed World War Z. I haven't seen it since it came out, and I don't know if I'll ever see it again. I don't think the film was a bad film. I just didn't think it was, quite the landmark movie that it should have been. Not that it could have been, but it really should have been. So this guy, John McPhail, the director of Anna and the Apocalypse, I can't deny that he's a gifted filmmaker. I mean, this is a very confident film. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of money. It's extremely well produced. There's some really striking visuals in it. Tonally, it absolutely works. I mean, the obvious antecedent, Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Glee, it really does have that kind of feel to it. And maybe that's part of the problem too, because I'm not a fan of either. I thought the kind of the insufferable, very precious nature of both of those were kind of present here. And I mean no disrespect to those who love either of those series, it just wasn't for me. I didn't hate the characters I was supposed to hate, and I didn't love the characters I was supposed to love. A part of me wants to see that movie about an evil, overzealous, megamaniacal teacher who willingly feeds the parents to the zombies. I'm like, this is the movie I want to see. I don't really care about this stuff. I don't care about the young people. I felt like I'd seen those characters before. I wrote it down because I was so taken by this performance. Sarah Swire as Steph.
Yes.
That character was a breath of fresh air. Like, why couldn't the film just been about her? And I'm glad you all had a good response to Ella Hunt. I didn't. I thought she's lovely, but I thought the character of Steph was like, I mean, this should have been what the film was. This is a chance the film should have taken, and it didn't. And same with the ending, which I won't spoil for people who haven't seen Anna and the Apocalypse. But I thought there's a really grim ending there that the film really would have impressed me with had it had. And then it has this kind of Scooby-Doo Shaun of the Dead ending where a van shows up and, okay, it's Zombieland. We're okay. It's all safe. And I do think that the best scene of the film does borrow a little much from Shaun of the Dead. It's that wonderful musical number where they're singing and dancing around, the zombie apocalypse is happening behind them, and they're oblivious to it. I don't think there's a funnier idea, really, in a zombie comedy than people who are oblivious to the zombie apocalypse. That's one of my favorite things about Shaun of the Dead. I thought it played that joke. It really held that joke for a long time. And in this film, it's in one sequence, and I thought that was the most successful scene in the film. I thought the whole concept of a zombie musical really worked. But anyway, yeah, I didn't care for this film. I thought there were missed opportunities, frankly. There's a lot of good here. It was clearly made by talented people. This isn't some hackneyed film. I could see why it has a cult following. It's a zombie romantic comedy musical. How could it not be an instant midnight movie cult film? Of course it is. But I don't think it completely earns its cult status, rather.
Well, and I know, too, when it came out, especially showing it on the festival circuit, I'm a little weary a lot of times when that idea is built into the movie. Like, this is the next cult film.
Right.
I hate that
Me too.
declaration, because I'm like, that's not actually how cult films work. But okay.
Exactly.
Like,
right.
you don't tell us what the next cult film is. You let the film run its course, and then we discover if it's a cult film or not based on. I think they should have said, if you love Shaun of the Dead and Buffy, you'll love End of the Apocalypse. And then they would have found its audience, and there we go. And mostly, I say that, too, because since it's played, I've had 0 requests to ever play it again. So if there had suddenly been, if I'd seen a ton of fans come out of the woodwork who came every week, and I think we played it 3 weeks, I think, when we finally got to open it. And it didn't do very well overall. But even if I'd had like 5 people who came every Friday and like sang the song, I could see some kind of like future for that film as a cult film. I also don't really feel like that's one that you could be like, we're going to start showing this on Fridays and Saturdays at midnight, handing out lyrics to everybody, that you'd get an audience. I mean, the last film that kind of did that, I think, was like Repo the Genetic Opera, which, you know, for better or worse, how everyone has their opinion about that film. That was one that was kind of, it wasn't billed to be the next cult classic. It was a film that had to go underground in order to have any views, but billed itself as like special because of that. But I definitely got a Repo feel about Anna and the Apocalypse when I watched it. I was just like, maybe it's trying too hard. Maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know.
I think that's a fair criticism. I don't see it as like a midnight type movie. Yeah, I can see the idea of maybe this is the next cult movie. It's like someone trying to say we're the next The Room, and it's like, dude, you can't do that if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's like The Room versus Birdemic, where it's like Birdemic was shoved down everyone's throat as this thing, and it's like, no, it's not. Like, this is literally just crap. But
it's an exercise in what happens if you make a movie using nothing but the first take.
Exactly. Whereas The Room, which I hate The Room. I hate its existence in cinema. But I will give it credit for the path that it took from being super serious. The actual definition of camp, where you go so far, you take it so seriously that you go so far above serious that you land on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's where that is. But yeah, it's being told that you're going to enjoy something one way is different. It's like, you can even, if we started to place things like, if we put Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead, and End of the Apocalypse together, you could run that as a trilogy.
Oh, for sure.
The expectation isn't like these are cult classics. Like Shaun of the Dead was a hit. Like, that's the other thing too. Shaun of the Dead was a hit. An art house hit. It wouldn't be deemed a cult classic. You can build a cult around it, but overall you're building a cult around Edgar Wright, not around Shaun of the Dead. So I don't know.
Thank you for making that distinction. No, thank you, Keith, for making that distinction, because that's always something that comes up. I remember like two examples from 2004. I remember Garden State and Napoleon Dynamite. People are like, they're cult classics. No, they're not. They made $40 million. Those movies were hits. It doesn't matter that you got the little Napoleon Dynamite bobblehead. Those movies were blockbusters for their budget and what they were. The Goonies is not a cult classic. The Goonies has, it has a resonance. It's a nostalgia favorite, but it
was a summer blockbuster.
It was a huge, it made $60 million in 1985, which would be great even today for that film. And thank you for bringing up Repo. I despise that film. I got to see it at a screening. I hate that freaking movie so much. And I won't go too much on it, but I did see it. There was a screening of it at the Mayan, and the director, what's his name? Darren Lynn Bousman?
Yes.
He was there with a few actors there, and everyone in the audience was already hooting and hollering before the movie started. I thought, oh, God. And it was on the poster outside the theater, the next cult classic, 4 stars from some critic I've never heard of. And, I mean, that movie is just torture. But everybody in that theater, like, they were drinking the Kool-Aid. They wanted to believe that it was this masterpiece. And, you can't argue with that, obviously. But I agree with you, Keith. I mean, the rule, and I think it is a rule, we have to discover these films. We can't be told this is the new religion. We have to find these films. And these films, most of the time, they have to fail. They have to be that guy you encounter at your high school reunion and go, hey, man, you look really good. I thought you were a loser back in the 80s, but, man, you look great. I find that most cult movies are like that. They're the movies that failed in some way, artistic, monetary, or both, in one way, and then years later we're able to like look at it with more of a clear sense or just a completely new sense, and we adopt it and love it like it's a puppy, and it becomes this thing that we have to share with people. It can't be this thing of the director going, hey man, you like the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Well, wait till you see Repo the Genetic Opera exhibition.
Yeah.
Or something like Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And we really do have to draw a line underneath, like, what is marketing and what is actual cult buildup. And I kind of look at, I think in the last 10 years, I'm only going to put like I could put other films there, but to me, Ari Aster's Hereditary and Midsummer have the potential to become cult classics because they both were released, they both were divisive. People either loved it or hated it. They weren't extreme hits by any stretch of the imagination. They made back their money, but they weren't blockbusters. And when his next film comes out, I'm certain people will go back and watch the other two and then start to put those in line with where everything goes. And Hereditary is wildly overdramatic, but in all the best scary ways. Midsummer is a little too lax, but also in the best ways that sort of define it. And that's the stuff that we should, I'm real curious to see the path of films like that to becoming cult classics, rather than, and it goes to, it's not just being the next cult classic, it's also when people say the scariest film of the year. Like, just stop deciding what's scary for us. Stop deciding when we're going to become a cult. Just tell us a merit about this film.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring up Anna in the show is because, like you said, Keith, like it's not like it's had massive legs, so I kind of feel like it's almost been underseen. So I was like, hey, let's give it a little shout. But Barry, you saw something else as a part of a double feature with this, and I don't mind talking about it more in depth.
I won't say too much about it because I did want to focus mostly about Anna and Keith's being here. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about last night with my crushing disappointment that Anna and the Apocalypse wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I'll be honest, again, I'll be completely honest with you. Expecting a Romero-esque film and getting Grease 2 really pissed me off. Okay, I was really angry. They're singing.
Don't do Grease 2 that way.
Dang!
Cult classic, Keith? Do you think?
Yes, that is a cult classic.
Okay.
It's taken like 40 years, but yes, that's a cult classic.
Yeah, and you know what? You're absolutely right. That fits the definition. Thank you. Yes. So forgive me. All right, forget that. Forget I said that. No, so I was unhappy with Anna, so I thought, there's this other movie on Hulu I keep hearing is a really great zombie film. So I watched Little Monsters, the film starring Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad, which came out a few years ago. I don't know if I'd call that really necessarily a great film, but I liked it. It has a real sharp sense of humor. There's a nastiness there. I enjoyed kind of the reversing of expectations, certainly with Lupita Nyong'o, her playing this character that I never would have thought to cast her in that role, and I thought she was really wonderful. And Josh Gad basically really aggressively going after his image as Disney's Golden Boy. I thought that was a really wonderful thing. Again, not a movie I think I'm ever going to revisit, but I liked it a lot. It was kind of what I want from a zombie comedy. I thought it had some inventiveness in its plotting and but I don't know if I'm going to think about it a week from now, but I liked it, which was not what I had with Anna.
Well, and along the lines of, like, if we are drawing a little like train track with the current I don't know, just drive out of the zombie genre. I mean, we're due for either a reinvention or a complete cessation of zombie as a topic. I feel we've just kind of we've passed that point at some point in all of everything that's happened. But I don't know if either of you have seen One Cut of the Dead.
I have not.
Film that came out last year. Put that in your queue as your next kind of like zombie adventure. Because that's another one that, like Train to Busan, I mean, I will count Anna in the through line of getting out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I go to One Cut of the Dead. Like, I feel anything that's been in between that within a zombie film, I barely recognize. I have not seen Little Monsters, though it is on my list to check out. Mostly because I love Lupita Nyong'o and love the idea of her happily taking a role as a kindergarten teacher that has to save her students from.
She is easily the best part of that movie. Easily.
Probably.
Wonderful in that movie. Yeah, amazing.
But, looking at all three of those films, those are three other countries than us. South Korea for Busan, Japan for One Cut of the Dead, and
Australia for Little Monsters. Yeah.
Australia for Little Monsters, and then Anna is British,
Ireland?
Scottish. I think it's a mix. Ireland,
I think.
somewhere
Scottish,
over there.
Right? Isn't it Scottish?
It is Scottish? Okay.
I think John McPhail is Scottish. Yeah.
I'm looking it up, but that makes sense. But what are I honestly can't think of recent memory of an American zombie movie of in this time period, the last 4 years, that is worth any kind of salt to be like, oh, that's a good one. And I don't know what that says more about zombies steering off course from America, and which is the path it took at the very beginning. I mean, from George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, he did Dawn of the Dead, but that inspired Fulci and Argento and all those folks to do their zombie movies, from zombie to and zombies they called not exactly Dawn of the Dead, but they sort of split off of that. Like, it was kind of like Dawn of the Dead Part 2. Like, they wanted people to draw the line directly from Dawn of the Dead to their Italian version or whatever. But hold on. UK is the country of origin for Anna and the Apocalypse, but I do believe he is Scottish, the director, and they shot it in Scotland.
Okay.
So it gets to ride. It rides a couple of lines over there in the UK. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
Who knows what Brexit did to actually really make who gets it in the divorce.
Right.
But I do find it interesting that, like, some of the more notable original stuff is not of America. And if anything, like, the only zombie film I can think of that came out in the last few years was Zombieland 2. And I really I didn't see it, and I didn't hear anything about it, as in, like, good or bad.
It exists.
I think it's a fun time. It's not like essential viewing necessarily, but I had fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
The first one's essential. I don't think the second one is.
Yeah. I mean, it got its cast to return after 10 years? So there's merit to be had there when you can reunite your cast. I'm trying to look up. You guys keep talking. I'm looking up zombie movies to see if something from the last few years.
It's all good. I'll talk Little Monsters just a little bit. It seems very clear that the filmmakers had a different movie in mind until they got Lupita Nyong'o. Like, Alexander England is a complete and utter jackwagon who I wanted to die from, like, frame one. And he becomes tolerable by the end. But it's like, if the movie had been anchored around him and Josh Gad, like, I would have despised this movie with a fiery passion. However, because she's in it, and because she's so engaging and so believable as a teacher, trying to wrangle cats that are kindergarteners, it's absolutely just a wonderful film. And again, like, she helps, remove the stink of Dave some just by her being so good and being like, well, maybe there's some value to this guy. And you're like, well, maybe we should listen to Lupita Nyong'o. So at the end, I think it had some really fun things to do. Like, when they're leading the zombies out is all I will say. That was a pretty fun thing that they did. But I'm again, if she wasn't in it, it would have been a complete dumpster fire as I'm concerned. And so I'm so glad that she was in it, because it was a fun time. And it's on Hulu as well, so it's not like you have to pay a lot to see it.
I think it's the thing about the movie that I found kind of brilliant in a very subtle way is that it's the through line of the movie is that Lupita Nyong'o's teacher is trying to keep these kids on this field trip blissfully unaware of the zombie apocalypse. She's doing everything she can to distract them. And I think it's a great comment. And, I don't know if I would have known this, now that I'm a parent. I can't tell you what it's like this every time I take my daughter shopping. What it's like to just I don't want you looking at that terrible person over there. I don't want you watching that father yell at his child in the aisle at Walmart. You know, like I'm constantly trying to do that, like put blinders on my daughter's eyes and ears from the monsters out there in the world. And I think the movie, in a very subtle, but I think in a very tangible way, it's making that comment that, you know, whether as teachers or as parents or just as people, we're trying to protect the innocence of kids. Although, as we see over the course of the film, the kids, you know, they're very savvy to everything. They're not necessarily all that innocent themselves. But I like that aspect of it because it's a constant aspect for the Lupita Nyong'o character. It's not so much that she wants to save the kids. That she realizes it's a very dire situation. They're probably all going to die. Really, that's kind of her mindset. But from beginning to end, she's trying to just keep their mindset happy. She's trying to keep them happy. She's like this birthday party clown that just will not quit. And then she meets the Josh Gad character, who literally, basically is a birthday party clown, and we see that he's actually the most evil character in the movie. I like that aspect about it. I think there's a little more to it than just being a zombie comedy, which I thought was great. But I do agree with you, Dave. I mean, the main character, even though he's supposed to be insufferable, it's a little too effective, isn't it, how insufferable he is? Because the first act of the movie is all about his character. She enters the movie, and it's kind of this refreshing. I mean, not only is Lupita Nyong'o just so lovely, but her performance is very stylish and interesting. And he's kind of going at it from far more, you know, natural and not really as interesting place.
He's a transgressively awful person in the first act.
Yeah.
And so not only is she having to deal with all the kids and the horrors of what's going on, she's having to deal with getting hit on by this guy through the entire runtime of the movie too. Right. And so like that's where it's just like there's this grating edge to it, which the fact that I liked it so much really speaks to the quality of the film, I think, overall.
Well, and it's funny you bring up children too, and sort of like that as a direction with Little Monsters, because you know, when I think about Train to Busan, I think of the kids in that movie. Like that movie is adult, starts adult, but then it's about what happens to the children involved in the situation that really kind of drives the deeper parts of that story. And then you get to Anna and the Apocalypse, and we're dealing with literal teenagers, which, you know, you're still playing with those boundaries that happen in films all the time, which is, do you kill kids? You know, you put them in a situation where people die, and how many of the kids end up dying, which in Anna, some do. And it's, I mean, I guess we don't count them as kids in the same way that, you know, teenagers in slasher movies get murdered too, and they're older. Like there's something about becoming an actual teenager that makes you fair game to die on film, versus under tweens and below equals protecting them. This reminded me though of looking up another out of the box zombie film, The Girl with All the Gifts.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Which is 2016, also from the UK. But that's another one that goes in a different direction than has been brought up all this time with zombie movies. And then one, I'll call it a failure just because I think it's a little too into itself, is The Dead Don't Die, the Jim Jarmusch.
Yes, I would call it a failure too, Keith. Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't seen it. I've heard enough bad from enough people. I'm just like, I guess I have to miss it because the trailer looks promising.
Yeah. I mean, he made an amazing vampire movie.
He did.
I thought, and I'm forgetting the name of that one.
Only Lovers Left Alone, right?
There you go.
Left Alive.
Left Alive, sorry. Yeah.
That's a great film.
It is.
But Dead Don't Die.
No. Wasted opportunity. I can't imagine what it was like for that cast to stand around and be like, this is going to work, right? This is funny, right?
Well, I think Jim Jarmusch made his way over the years to being someone who I call him like a cameo director, where he's built up so many famous friends over time or people who've loved his other stuff that he literally says, I want you in 5 minutes of this movie. And then they're just like, cool, that sounds great. It's a movie with you. And then he literally gives them their 5 minutes of script. And they're like, great, so what's my motivation? Okay, this is happening. And then it gets put together, and they've not had a journey with the rest of the cast. And I think that he uses such big names and tries to use them out of the box that it ends up just being a mess, at least these days, at least with this one. Because I don't think anyone else knew who anyone else was playing in that movie or how any of them intersected or what was the point.
Yeah.
And it was all because everyone's so big, they're busy. So, well, we only have this person for 2 days, and we have him on Monday and Friday, then he's gone for 3 weeks, so then we'll get him back then, and he'll wrap up the movie. That's no way to make a movie. Even though it might get it funded because you have big-name celebrities. But
Fair enough.
That was a frustrating experience.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I just don't get it. It's Jarmusch, Stranger Than Paradise didn't speak to me when I was 9 years old, but when I saw it when I was 19, I thought this is fantastic. And same thing with Mystery Train. There's some of his movies, like Ghost Dog is one of my favorite movies from the very beginning. I'm like, oh, this movie is like it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And there's others, like The Limits of Control that I appreciate over repeat viewings. But this is the first time I sat there and thought either I'm just not getting what he's trying to tell me, or there's just nothing there.
And if anything, too, he could have made that any kind of horror movie. He could have made that a slasher movie.
Yes.
And it probably would have worked better. But I think because he chose zombie, everybody was already over it, like including those actors. I think everyone's just like, I don't really know what zombie means in this scenario, what you're trying to say with this movie, but we'll go with it. And they went with it someplace.
To mixed results, it sounds like.
Yes.
It's a disaster, Dave. It's a depressing experience. The one good joke in the movie is that Tilda Swinton is actually weird. Surprise, surprise. The joke is that Tilda Swinton is actually, like, she's not even acting. She's just a weird person. She's actually kind of a creature herself. And it's a joke that the TV series, What We Do in the Shadows, actually makes, that Tilda Swinton is actually a real vampire in real life. So I thought it was funny that, like, wow, this TV show that doesn't have the following it should have, because it's hilarious and wonderful, that actually got the joke better than the one that Jim Jarmusch kind of tossed off at the end of the yes.
With her in actuality.
Ouch. Okay. Well, I'm honestly like I know Keith. You're like, let's talk Alien the Apocalypse. Like, as long as it's a free ranging, we rabbit trail all the time, so don't feel bad at all. This has been a fantastic discussion. Yeah. So
I love running in a hamster wheel and just seeing where we land when we stop it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So, Keith, where can we find more of you and what you're doing out there, and between the Sie Filmcenter and the Denver Film and everything that's going on?
Well,
we're going to talk more later. Like if you're catching this later, we're going to record a thing after this that we're going to post before this episode. So, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Well, if you are like us, trapped at home, you can catch any of my programming in one specific place right now, and that is the internet. Via our virtual cinema at denverfilm.org, which is our website. While the Sie Filmcenter is sleeping, we have plenty of fantastic films that we're showing there, all curated by myself and Matt Campbell, who programs some special stuff. We're running a bunch of films that would have been in the Women Plus Film Festival that we were going to hold in April, but of course was postponed for COVID. We're running a few of those every week, beginning actually this weekend, for about the next 9 weeks, on top of other fantastic fare that's there for a few weeks at a time. So it's a great place to play with our virtual cinema. It is something that I actually think is not just temporary. It came out of emergency, but I see many possibilities for it to be something great in the next few years. So jump in, play around. I know it's not as good as being in the movie theater, but but you can't catch COVID from watching a movie on virtual cinema. Not yet. And so,
someone's making the movie. You know it's happening right now.
So you might as well experience that.
Cool, sweet, Barry.
And support the Denver Film Society at the same time. All the revenue made from tickets helps us at this moment when we do not have the avenues that actually kept us funded. So.
Fair enough. I just preview coming attractions. Is that something that might move into the film festival this year?
I can say for certainty that yes, it will.
Okay, sweet.
That right now, one of the reasons we moved to the digital, our digital platform, is to host what will most likely be 99% of, if not 100, of the Denver Film Festival there. If we have the ability, if the world is okay, come November, and we can host a couple of screenings at the Sie or at one of the larger venues around town that we used to use for the festival, like the Ellie Calkins Opera House, we will do our best to try a couple of those events. Otherwise, our goal is to program for our virtual cinema, and right now is the perfect time to play around with it and see what it can do, and just make it easy. Sign an account in, become a member of Denver Film, get your member discount, all that stuff, and then in a few months when we get to the festival, you will be a pro at all this stuff, and your festival experience will be improved 3 times from having jumped in the water already.
So one more follow-up question, which we'll probably be rehashing at this point, but it's all I want to ask anyway, just in case someone misses when we do our extra chat. Is this something that will be opened up per case basis outside of Colorado?
Like each of the films?
Yeah, like as you're doing virtual screenings going forward, yeah. I know that there's various circumstances that could keep that from happening.
I mean, as it is right now, every film that we play on virtual cinema is open to the U.S. As a whole. When we dip into the film festival, because of other film festivals and not wanting to sort of like poach tickets from or views from all over before it gets to another film festival, some of those will be what's called geo-blocked to Colorado. But it'll say, if you go to any of the films, it'll let you know right away. It'll say, this film is available to watch in the United States of America or in Colorado.
Okay.
And if it senses that your computer is not in Colorado and it's a Colorado-only film, then it'll tell you no.
Fair enough. Cool. I look
Slam the door in your face.
in a loving way, because we want you to come back for other stuff later. That's all.
Well, exactly. And right now, I think we have about 15 virtual cinema titles that are playing in perpetuity, and then a couple of special events here and there. And like we'll increase those over time. Trying to find the best way to bring back some of our programs like Screen with Teresa Mercado and Cinema Q, and just everything that we do on a normal basis. Just navigating the world of virtual cinema rights is a whole other thing that's fascinating. I'll put that word on it. That nicer sounding word than
nightmare. Well, I appreciate you putting that work in.
Well, and I appreciate you guys asking about it and experimenting with it yourself and enjoying it.
Absolutely. Barry, where can we find what you got coming up around here?
Let's see. My latest articles, my self-indulgent retrospective articles on 2 cult classics from my youth. One is Krull from 1983. The other is a film I saw in college, didn't like, revisited it a week ago, fell madly in love with it. A very expensive B film called The Relic, directed by Peter Hyams. One of my favorite monster movies of the 90s. Anyway, these movies are, they're not masterpieces, but I enjoy them. And so my very self-indulgent articles on these films are currently up on the Hollywood and Toto site, as well as a retrospective on Bryan Singer's X-Men, which just turned 20 years old.
You saw this on Facebook. I rewatched Dark Phoenix, and I liked it a lot, and Steph was shocked it didn't suck.
All right. Welcome to the club, buddy. Welcome to the cult, the serious cult of Dark Phoenix, because that's a very small cult.
It really is. So next week, we're going to jump a little bit into the action boat, talking some John Wick movies. I think we're going to kind of make this a back-to-back Keanu episodes, possibly, with another movie that's coming out this summer, theoretically, maybe COVID's allowing or not. But until next week, this is Dave.
This is Barry.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us, sir. I really appreciate it.
Keith, thanks for having me, guys.
Catch you guys next week.